Welcome back to another edition of Maryland Family Matters. My name is Jeff Trimbath, and I'm the president of the Maryland Family Institute. And it is my great privilege to welcome to the conversation today Ryan Bomberger. Ryan is the founder, president, CEO of the Radiance Foundation, and a friend of ours at the Maryland Family Institute. Ryan, welcome to the podcast today.
Hey, it's great to be here with you.
I want to start just if you could tell us a little bit of your story. Where did you grow up? Did Maryland play a role in your story? We obviously like to talk about that as the Maryland Family Institute. And I know you live right across the Potomac River in Virginia. How did you come to be located here in the DMV?
Sure. Well, I started off life in Pennsylvania. I was born in Carlisle, Pennsylvania. And
Mm.
my story is one of those, how should I say, the heart cases that people talk about. I sometimes refer to them as I say the heart cases. Other people say the hard cases. But I had a birth mom who experienced the horrific violence of rape.
Mm.
And thankfully, she did not make me face the horrific violence of abortion. And so that
Oh.
was the beginning of my life. A courageous birth mom whose single decision would have reverberations for generations. I was adopted into your typical American family of 15. I have six brothers and six sisters. 10 of us were adopted. I was the first of 10. And then it was like,
Wow.
new child added to the family every year, and loved like crazy by two Christian parents, Henry and Andrea Bomberger. Loved us
Mm.
all. Multicolor family. That
Yeah.
was the beginning of my life, the reason why I'm so passionate about defending the most vulnerable today. And throughout my life after college, I ended up moving to Maryland, moved to Baltimore. I would love to say that it was the best time of my life, but it wasn't. I moved there with a really close friend of mine who unfortunately started embracing the whole 5% Nation of Islam, just a
Mm.
really racist worldview, and
Mm.
didn't really work with my worldview. So we had a
Sure.
falling out there. But I did love my time in Maryland working with young people. I was a mentor, a big brother. I was also a co-youth leader for a short time there. But it was the beginning of me realizing what God had in store for me. And thankfully, my sister lived there too, and her family. So I got lots of love from them, even
Right.
during a really difficult time in my life. But I do love the state of Maryland. I
Right.
moved from there down to Virginia Beach, and that was a culture shock. Going from Baltimore to Va
Mm.
Beach. But so and then I progressively went farther and farther south. I ended up moving to Atlanta, and and during that time, I got married to the love of my life, Bethany. We have four
Mm.
children. Two of my four children were also adopted. And
Wow.
then during that time in Atlanta was when my wife, Bethany, and I started the Radiance Foundation, because we wanted to equip Christians, especially, to be able to engage in these culture shifting issues. And so many times we felt like Christians were the ones who were being silent, and yet we're the ones who
Mm.
know the truth. And so we started the Radiance Foundation to do three things: to illuminate, educate, and motivate. To
Yeah.
illuminate the truth that every human life has God given purpose, whether planned or unplanned.
Mm.
To educate people about all these culture shaping issues in the context of God given purpose. And then the last part, motivate, which is not always
Mm.
easy, but we're emphatic about people taking their faith and their knowledge and putting it into action. So we started the Radiance Foundation in 2009,
Wow.
and wow, it's been a roller coaster with 80 billboards in Atlanta, where we put Black children are endangered species, too many aborted.com. So we decided we are going to take the two of the hardest issues possible, abortion and race, combine them in a
Wow.
billboard campaign in Atlanta. And so that's basically, the beginning of my story, and where the Radiance Foundation came from my own personal story of adoption and my wife's story of being a single mom. And
So it has this sort of threefold, uh, was inform, educate, motivate. Is that right?
illuminate, educate,
Illum
motivate.
and and, um, and that results the practical outworking, as you mentioned, billboards. I mean, I know you do a lot of speaking across the country. You publicize things. How does that sort of work itself out, in addition to those activities?
Well, sure. Well, my wife is a teacher by profession. So she taught in both public and private, suburban, urban
Mhm.
schools. And I was a creative director in the ad agency world. And so we wanted to create tools to equip Christians to be able to
I
engage in
got
these issues. So billboards were part of it. Our books, we have these children's books, He is He and She is She. Why do we have to say that? But we do in this day and
you. Yeah,
age. Pro life
sure.
kids, not equal. And of course, my newest book, Should Have Been Aborted. That's part of what we do. The speaking, college campuses, galas, conferences all across the United States. Up until COVID, probably about 70 plus every year. And then my body took a beating and I had to battle cancer. So
Mm.
I trimmed that down a bit, but we still do a lot of those events. But that's all part of what we do to illuminate that every life has God-given purpose.
And you've blessed Maryland with that speaking gift. You were the speaker at the Maryland Right to Life or Maryland March for Life a couple of years ago here in
Yes.
Annapolis.
Yes,
So it
several
was
times, and
great.
my daughter Aaliyah sang there too, so that was
Oh, that's right.
extra
That's right.
special for me, yeah. A
Oh,
lot of, just a lot of great warriors there in the state of Maryland. I
mm,
know that seems like the odds are all against you, but you know what? God works with
sure.
that all the time. So,
That's right.
we just have to keep speaking hope into one another.
That's great. Well, you mentioned your book, which is just published here a couple of weeks ago. Should Have Been Aborted. Here's a copy of it. Thank you for sending it to me. I'm working
Yes.
my way through it and really loving learning more about your upbringing and the first chapter is really gripping. Actually, your mother revealed something to you that is an amazing thing. I'll leave that for folks to
That's
figure
my
out.
mom calling you just to just to thank you. Thank you for talking about I'm just joking.
Right. Um, talk to us about the book. Why did you write it? What is your sort of main thesis statement, and what do you want people to know as they read it?
Well, I started it actually in 2009. That was originally when I came up with the idea for the book, and so I thought, wow, I'm going to be able to write this book as my wife and I were, fledgling nonprofit people, and I'd have all this time. I didn't have any time. So 10
Right.
years, 15 years
Mm,
later, still nothing. But there was a particular moment in my life last November when I actually, for the first time in my life, connected with biological or my birth family.
mm.
And that
Yeah,
for me kind of became like the last chapter, actually the second to last chapter in the book. But it was the impetus for me writing this book because I thought, you know what, I have this story people ask me all the time. And here this is happening miracle after miracle. There's too much to even get into it here. But that was the impetus for me finally putting my story down in writing.
I think my wife showed me your Instagram page or
Yeah.
something. It was you were talking on the beach, walking
Yes.
and talking, either having just met your birth mom or waiting to meet her. I forget, but it was. I mean, my wife was gripped by this video,
Right.
and so talk about that moment.
Well, it was not my birth mom. See, I found out back in
Ah, okay.
2023 when I got my original birth certificate from Pennsylvania. I found out actually within moments, my wife and I, she was looking online and my wife actually found her obituary. That was
Ah,
devastating for me because of so
yeah,
many reasons. I just wanted to
yeah.
thank her face to face, but there were other relatives, but every attempt at getting information just went nowhere.
Hmm.
2 years later, we we found another obituary from another relative of my birth mama's sister,
Hmm.
and we're reading that obituary and found out more information about the last surviving sister of my birth mom. So when I was in Florida, I was actually visiting that last surviving sister. Her name is Carol,
Wow,
Carol
wow.
Lambert. She's not only the sister of my birth mom, but she actually took in my birth mom and her younger sister, both girls,
Hmm.
because they were suffering poverty and neglect. So she was the sister slash foster mom, if you will, to my
Yeah,
birth mom. And she's a
amazing,
remarkable human being.
amazing. That is amazing. Yeah. Well, great. Well, let's talk a little bit about the book. So this is your autobiography, and you tell a lot of great stories. A wonderful story about your going to Harvard, which was just really interesting to me. You know, those of us who haven't gone to Ivy League schools oftentimes think we're at a disadvantage. We may not be equipped to engage the incredible intellect of these schools. That was
Mhm.
not your experience, was it, when you went to Harvard?
Not at all. I was When I go to these college campuses, one thing is when we talk about a particular issue, I'm always making sure that I'm informed about some of these tangential issues because that's always where they want to go. They never want to talk about the core issue.
Yeah,
And so that I can talk about these things that are inextricably tied, but then bring them back to the center. At Harvard, I just thought these guys they're so brilliant, and I'm not worthy. I'm not. That's how I felt going there.
yeah,
But
yeah.
I did a lot of research because I was thinking, well, they're going to ask me these deeply philosophical questions with citations. They didn't. I will tell you, out of all, I've done probably about 100 colleges over the years.
Yeah.
Out of all those colleges, I think they were the most arrogant and most, how shall I say this? I'll use a different word than I was going to use. Uninformed students that I'd
Mm,
ever spoken to. At least the pro-abortion ones were. The pro-life ones were very well informed. But it was crazy.
wow.
We're in this auditorium where they all had their own microphones so they could say anything they wanted during my presentation and during the Q&A, the very lengthy Q&A.
Wow.
And I was wrong. I was not challenged intellectually by these students, and it just blew
Wow.
my mind. You think Ivy League.
Yeah.
I've found community colleges with far more intellectual rigor than
Um,
those moments there at Harvard. But it was
right.
for me, it's still a great opportunity to be able to speak truth in an
Mhm.
environment that has such an aversion to it.
So let's talk a little bit about the broader issue of life, if you would. It's been an amazing
Mhm.
several years, obviously, since Roe was repealed through the Dobbs decision. A lot
Yes,
of state activity. Obviously, here in Maryland, we had a very unfortunate, like many other states, amendment process where now abortion is enshrined in our state constitution. It was of the 10 in 2024, we had the worst results of all the states. 74% of Maryland
right.
voters voted in favor of that. And despite the deception and all that kind of stuff, it is now enshrined in our Constitution. Are you fundamentally uh, optimistic, pessimistic? Do you think we're winning on life? Do you think we're losing on life? What's your overall assessment, Ryan?
As a Christian, I'm forever optimistic because hope breaks through in
Mm,
the seemingly most impossible situations. So I have to have that sort of mindset going into this. Otherwise,
yeah,
you can just get so dragged down with a nihilistic sort of uh,
yeah,
position or disposition. I mean, Roe being overturned seemed politically impossible, and that happened. Of course, SCOTUS didn't do what they should have done when they brought Roe in the first place by
right,
invalidating every pro-life law, and they just kicked the can down the road
right,
by pushing it off to states. I mean, life is not a states' rights issue, and
right.
that part of it was horrific. But I am hopeful. I am hopeful because there, from younger generations to people in their 70s and 80s who've been fighting for so long, and I'm so grateful for every one of them.
Yeah.
They they're still fighting. We're winning over young people,
Hmm.
to this, and they have and it's great to see on social media. You hear not just, the bumper sticker mantras that the pro-abortion side has, but you hear the deep reasoning, the deep philosophical, religious underpinnings, the scientific underpinnings. And
Hmm.
so I'm encouraged by seeing this new wave of young pro-lifers. But wow, we've got a ways to go. As someone who does messaging,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
for a lot of what I do through the Radiance Foundation and actually collaborative projects with other organizations, we we're out messaged. I don't mean just outspent. I know we're outspent sometimes 20 to 1 or even more, but we just can't seem to get a handle on the messaging.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh
Talk
that
about that. Would you what I mean, where do we not get it right? Where do they get it really right? I mean, I'd love your insights given what you do for a living.
well, even with my body, my choice. Of course, we know that's all a lie, and we know
Right.
it's not even scientifically accurate. But the other side is really great at concision, where I think sometimes
Mm,
pro-lifers can be really long-winded. Brevity is
yeah,
beautiful,
yeah,
and I think sometimes we don't encapsulate the power, the profound nature of what we believe in in these little sound bites in a culture that is so inundated. We're drowning in messaging. It comes.
yeah,
I mean, we got these devices that 24/7 they're
yeah,
on, and it's hard to compete. And we don't always have a winning message. And we also, I think, sometimes like we have to fuse the emotional with the evidential. People say
Mm,
that facts won't change people's minds. That's not true. But I think a great mix of the emotional and the evidential can do that. And I don't
yeah.
think we do it as well as the other side. They're always bringing these stories, whether they're true or not. Most
Right.
of them are
Right.
not. They bring their little anecdotes and their stories. And I think we're doing a much better job in the past few years, but we were unprepared for Dobbs. We were
Yeah.
unprepared for these state amendments and having to
Yeah.
battle not only the misinformation from the pro-abortion activists, but their allies in news media and also their political friends.
Yeah.
Um, we've got a lot to overcome, and I just feel like if we were better at messaging, I'll give a case in point. People
Yep.
like me conceived in rape, and here we've got a lot of people pro-abortion side using that all the time, and I'm thinking pro-life side, pro-life politicians, you have an arsenal, and of course I'm talking of peaceful arsenal of
Right.
people.
Right.
Use them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let their stories be heard so we can counter this destructive propaganda on the other side. And I feel like politicians, especially pro-life politicians, they fail. It's almost like they don't even know what's at their fingertips. And that's the
Hmm.
frustrating thing for me.
We've talked about politicians and messaging. I want to now talk about the church and Christians. Given your decades now of doing this work, Ryan, what is your assessment of how Christians handle this issue? What are we not doing well that we should be doing better? What's missing?
Okay, I'll start with the positive.
Yeah.
Pro-life movement is predominantly made up of Christians, and we love people really well. And
Mm.
you see that in the 3,000 pregnancy centers that
Yeah.
provide care for mom, dad, child born and unborn,
Yeah.
the 450 plus maternity homes, and of course, faith-based adoption agencies. So we do a lot of things well. The problem is we can't do everything, and that's where the church should
Mm.
be entering in as a whole. But we have a church that is asleep. We have a church that's actually complicit with the other side. We have churches that are more than
Mm.
complicit. They're actually marching with the other side. They're actually championing the garbage, anti-life, anti-scriptural
Yeah.
propaganda out there. And I grew up in a non-denominational church, and I'll just take this moment to invite my fellow non-denominational evangelicals to step up. Stop equating every issue under the sun with abortion. Not all
Yeah.
things are equal. And that
Yes.
part drives me crazy. I go to the March for Life, thank heaven for my Catholic brothers and sisters. But if there wasn't, a Catholic church, there wouldn't be a pro-life movement for the most part. And so I feel
Mm.
like churches are absolutely asleep. They will black out their Instagram pages for Black Lives Matter, which that's a whole other issue. Um,
Yeah.
because which Black lives? Clearly not the ones that are unborn, clearly not
No.
the mothers who are, exploited by Planned Parenthood. But the church has to wake up. The church, we
Mm.
don't need apologies 50 years or a century later from denominations like they did with slavery. And we're sorry we didn't engage when we should have. We don't need that 50 years from now, 100 years from now. We need their involvement and their compassion now.
Yeah.
So my view on the church is that it is largely asleep
Hmm.
during one of the greatest injustices of our day.
What role does courage play in this battle, Ryan?
Everything, everything. I mean, it could be one courageous conversation where you change the mind of a young woman who's facing fear. My wife was a single mom. She faced that same fear as a single person facing an
Mm.
unplanned pregnancy. But your courageous words, your uncomfortability for that one moment can
Mm.
change someone's life forever and allow that life inside of her to exist and then to have those beautiful reverberations for generations. We have to be courageous. And I tell young people this all the time. Courage doesn't need a crowd. It just needs someone with conviction.
Mm.
Courage is
Great.
everything.
The book is Should Have Been Aborted by our friend Ryan Bomberger of the Radiance Foundation. Ryan, if folks want to become more involved with Radiance Foundation, want to get connected with you, or want to make a gift to support your work, how do they do that?
The easiest way is to go to Radiance, RADIANCE.life. And we're still on social for now, Facebook, Instagram, X, but radiance.life is the best way to get a hold of us and to see the content that we create that shows you how you can help illuminate uh, God given purpose in every one of us.
Ryan Bomberger, thank you so much for being a guest on Maryland Family Matters today. Thank you for your ministry, for your advocacy for life, and for standing for God's truth in the public sphere. You are an encouragement to all of us here at Maryland Family Institute.
Thank you so much. God bless.